Every English garden, no matter how wild it appears, is built from the same underlying DNA. Ideas that have surfaced again and again across centuries. Ideas about control, about beauty, and about our relationship with nature. In this series, we're not following a timeline, we're uncovering the deeper forces that shaped English gardens and still shape them today. And that is the DNA of the English garden. When we walk through an English garden, it's easy to think of it as a place of peace, a retreat from authority, a refuge from power. But for much of its history, the English garden was never meant to feel free. It was meant to be read. Every path, hedge, axis, and boundary once served a purpose far beyond beauty. They expressed ownership, hierarchy, and order. This episode explores one of the strongest strands in the DNA of the English garden: control. For centuries, control in gardens was not hidden. It was displayed. Straight lines told you where to walk, symmetry told you where to look. Walls and hedges told you where you belonged. Early English gardens borrowed heavily from classical and continental ideas in which geometry represented rational thought and moral order. To impose order on land was to demonstrate mastery, not only over nature but over society itself. A well-governed garden implied a well-governed household, and by extension, a well-governed realm. Some of the most disciplined gardens in medieval England belonged not to kings, but to monasteries. Monastic gardens were practical, structured, and purposeful. They were divided into clear compartments: cloisters for contemplation, psychic gardens for medicine, kitchen gardens for sustenance. Each space had a role, and each plant had a function. Nature was not wild here. It was organised in service of God, order, and self-discipline. The garden became a moral landscape, reinforcing obedience and restraint. Control was not decorative, it was spiritual. With the Tudors, control in gardens became overtly political. After decades of civil war, the Tudor dynasty used architecture and landscape to project stability and authority. Their gardens were rigid, symbolic, and theatrical. Knot gardens formed intricate patterns that could only be fully appreciated from above, a reminder of perspective and rank. Straight avenues aligned with the house, reinforcing the idea that power radiated outward from the monarch. Enclosed spaces emphasised exclusion as much as beauty. You were either invited or you were not. The garden was no longer just a space to enjoy, it was a stage upon which power was performed. Nowhere was garden control expressed more dramatically than in France. The formal gardens of André Le Nôtre, especially Versailles, represented absolute authority. With vast parterres, endless sightlines, nature flattened, clipped and commanded. From elevated terraces the monarch could survey land that appeared infinite. This was not subtle. The garden declared that nature, like the state, bent to human will. English elites adopted these principles eagerly, though often on a smaller scale. Formal English gardens in England echoed this language, using parterres laid out like embroidery, trees forced into geometric shapes, and space measured, repeated, and disciplined. The garden became an extension of governance. Control in gardens wasn't only about plants. It was about people. because paths dictated movement, terraces separated classes, and walls concealed labour. Garden workers were rarely meant to be seen. Their presence disrupted the illusion of effortless order. The higher one stood in society, the higher one viewed the garden from. This vertical separation reinforced hierarchy, quite literally. To look down on the garden was to look down on the world it represented. By the 18th century, overt control began to fall out of fashion. Formal geometry gave way to naturalistic landscapes, but control did not vanish, it adapted. As we explored in episode 1, English gardens learned to hide authority rather than abandon it. Lawns replaced parterres, curves replaced straight lines, and boundaries became invisible. But ownership remained absolute. The illusion of freedom required even greater intervention. Today, controlling gardens often feels gentler, but it's still present. Perfect lawns demand chemicals and constant mowing. Low-maintenance gardens rely on careful planning and editing. Wildlife gardens still involve choices about what belongs and what does not. Even rewilding is a form of control. Deciding where nature is allowed to take over is itself an assertion of authority. The language has softened, but the impulse remains. So in conclusion, control is not inherently negative. Gardens cannot exist without intention. But the English garden reveals something deeper about power. Over time, authority became quieter, less declarative, and more aesthetic. What once shouted now whispers. And perhaps that is the most English form of control at all. The English garden has always been more than a collection of plants. It's a reflection of how we see ourselves in relation to nature and to power. In this episode, we uncovered the DNA of control, how authority shaped the garden even when it learned to soften its voice. In the next episode, we'll explore another strand, the DNA of plants, obsession, empire, and identity. Because to understand the English garden, we have to understand what it was built to express.